Om Jananim Saradam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhurmuhu. So today we'll be discussing the divine life of Sri Sharda Devi, the Holy Mother. The fourth chapter describes the journey, the first journey of Sri Ma Sharda Devi to Dakshineshwar. So Swami Shardananji begins with a beautiful verse from the Rig Veda, and which describes what a journey is or should be like. In our life, we undertake various journeys. We travel to places of pilgrimage, we travel to other places just as a tourist. But the real purpose or the real function of journey, which can be compared to the journey of our life. Our life is a journey between birth and death. We are travelers on this planet. We are traveling in our own, because of our own karma and because of our own, you may say, inherent tendencies which push us forward and forward. So what should be the right spirit with which one ought to undertake a journey, especially if the journey is something like what we will see now. It was our first journey. Journeys were not so easy. So the title of this chapter itself is the first journey. The verse from the Rig Veda which I referred to, Swami Shardananji quotes here is Charana vai madhu vindati Charana swadum udum varum Suryasya pasya shrimanam Yona tandrayate charan Chareveti. Chareveti means move along, to march along. So the meaning of this verse is to march along in our own little journeys of life. To march along, not to stop, is nothing but to gain immortality. So the very fact that we do not stop but keep on moving, irrespective of the situations we are in. We may be in a very good situation or in a very bad situation, pleasant situations, unpleasant situations. But our journey should not stop. It should be, we should continuously move on. Move on means we should encounter different situations in life with equanimity. So that is the real meaning of a journey. Chareveti. Chara means to move. Chara iva iti. Once you go on, indeed, this alone is the true meaning of a journey. So marching by oneself is the sweet fruit of the journey. You see, journey can be in a group. But after all, everyone has to walk himself, walk this path alone. So that path, that walking, marching by oneself, swadum, charana swadum vindati, that is sweet. Marching by oneself, the fact that when one can walk on one's own path with full of freedom, itself is the sweet fruit of the journey. Destination people normally think once we reach the destination, that is the sweet fruit of the journey. After a long journey, we reach a place. But that doesn't mean we have to stop. In life, that doesn't happen. We go on and on and on, we march forward. And the marching itself, if we enjoy our travel, no matter whether we are in company, it doesn't really matter whether we are in company or whether we are marching alone. But the very fact that we are able to march itself is the sweet fruit of the journey. So this is how a traveler sets out on his physical journey or on his life journey. One is born alone and one has to die alone. And the journey continues from birth after birth till we get moksha. So that is to gain immortality, we are walking. Some of us will gain immortality sooner than others, but we cannot stop, we have to walk. Then the example is given, look at the sun, the ever-glorious and eternal traveler, who once having started on his journey, has never felt drowsy. Have you ever seen the sun missing its schedule? No matter clouds may cover it, but the sun is continuing to march on. It is only we that don't see this journey of the sun, but the sun rises at the same time, sets at the same time. It's going on and on and on. Eternal journey is going on, and it never feels drowsy. Tandrayate, yo na tandrayate charan, means it's not tired of walking. So we should be like the sun. We should be bright and powerful as the sun, always moving forward in our journey, not being defeated by circumstances, standing up to everything that fate or destiny may give to us. We may not be in the most pleasant of situations, but that doesn't mean we have to stop and give up the journey. We have to continue to walk. Hence, O traveler, take inspiration from the sun and march along. Charai veti, charai veti. So just keep marching along, march along. Whether you have company or you don't have company, it doesn't matter. Your journey is your own. From birth to death, you march alone. That is the idea. Now, when in the beginning of this chapter, Srima Sharada Devi is now embarking upon a journey which is going to change her whole life. I mean, not that this was the only phase of her life where things changed so dramatically, but till now she was under the protection, or maybe she was leading a life which she was used to since childhood in the safety of her mother's home and father's home, her own home. Sometimes now and then she used to go to Kamarpukur when Sri Ramakrishna came, but now she is embarking upon a journey which will take her to a new situation, a new place, entirely new people. So, and Swami Shardanji says, he gives an example. He says, everybody undertakes journey, but if there is some challenge, that's why people like to climb mountains, they used to encounter difficulties, they do trekking. They just don't want to walk on plain ground. They like to do trekking because that offers them a challenge, offers them difficult and very often unsurmountable situations. And they feel a great joy if they have traveled. That itself, marching itself, is the sweet fruit of our journey. You may ask, what is your destination? Trekking is, we do not choose, we may choose a place, a trekking path, but it's not for the destination that we are trekking. We trek for the fun of it. We enjoy trekking, we enjoy walking. So all these things we do because that itself, traveling itself, marching by oneself, is the sweet fruit of the journey that we undertake. So the more we encounter troublesome situations, actually the journey should be more interesting. One example Swami Shardananji gives here is, the more often gold is rubbed with a touchstone. Touchstone is normally used to polish the gold. The more it glitters. A fire burns more brightly when the wood is stirred. If for some reason you are burning firewood, if you notice, sometimes you have to blow into it, sometimes stir the wood, shake it vigorously so that the embers and all the things, the ashes will be shaken off from the surface, and then the bright fire gets oxygen and it starts burning. So fire burns more brightly when the wood is stirred, and a snake raises its hood when it is struck. The snake normally is very docile animal. It just goes on wriggling in the grass. But if somebody steps on it or somebody tries to stop its journey, then it raises its hood to strike. Similarly, Sardhananji says, a human soul awakens when a person is challenged. When there is a challenge in life, when a lot of challenging situations come in life, it is then that the inner spirit is awakened. Human beings really start living when they are challenged. The soul awakens because these challenges itself serve the purpose of pointing out the futility of life in this world. So we try to surmount these difficulties by holding on to something higher. And that itself is spirituality. Spirituality means holding on to something higher when one is challenged, so that one is not influenced, or maybe one is not defeated by the circumstances. We still hold on. It's like somebody is flowing in the river. If he gives up, then he will just be taken away by the current. But suppose he holds on to some branch of a tree while he is still flowing and being washed off. He just clings to that big branch or branch of a tree which is lucky enough to catch, and then he doesn't let go of that till the water subsides. So that is what spirituality does to us. That when a person is challenged, when things around him are not going according to his wish, and things are not smooth, then he catches hold of some ishta, some ideal, or some person who himself is very stable. And then no matter how much the water comes, this ishta or the Lord who is seated within helps us negotiate all the turbulence of the world. So the more the person is challenged, the tighter his grip becomes. That is the reason why we have to go on practicing spirituality, go on practicing prayers, go on practicing anything that connects us more and more firmly to the Lord. That is the essence of all our spiritual practice, that no matter how circumstances around us change, no matter how much challenging the circumstances around us, we hold on more firmly, or our soul awakens to that eternal Lord, and we grasp him with more power or more intensity than before. If we are not challenged, then we don't realize the importance of holding on to that stable Lord who is seated within. So if you see the lives of divine women who accompanied avatars in every age, if you see Sita, who came with Rama, and all other women, the divine consort, you can call the spiritual consorts of these incarnations. Swami Sardhanji mentions it in the Great Master. Here we'll find the author of this book also says that the lives of the divine women, if we study, who accompanied the avatars in every age, were full of suffering and tragedy. It's not just a coincidence, but we find it is very common. And they endured all forms of hardships. They demonstrated how to overcome suffering. That's one of the primary reasons why they are in that situation. They voluntarily accept that situation, and they demonstrate how to overcome suffering through strength of their willpower, and above all, how to surrender to the providence and hold on to the providence or the Lord or one's Ishta very firmly, so that one is not carried away or defeated by these circumstances. Suffering on top of suffering, continuous suffering, made the divinity of those great women spiritual consorts. Sita, how much she suffered in her life. She was a queen, no doubt, married to one of the most powerful princes, son of Dasharatha, was ruling a king. So she ought to lead a very comfortable life of a queen, full of power, glory, luxury. But she had to suffer. Just after her marriage, they were asked to go to the forest. So much of suffering she faced after her marriage. So, to a king, marriage to a king, she was not an ordinary woman. But still, these spiritual concerts or these divine women who came, they suffered a lot, and the divinity within was revealed. And in the process, they demonstrated to the entire world, not only to women but to everybody, that how can a person overcome suffering through strength of will and through surrender to God. That is why in India, in the Indian tradition, we first pay respect to Shakti, or the female counterpart of God. When we call upon some God, we say Lakshmi Narayana, and we never say Narayan Lakshmi. Lakshmi is the spiritual consort of Narayana, Vishnu. But the name of Vishnu is Lakshmi Narayana. We call him Lakshmi Narayana. It's a very common name, Lakshmi Narayana, because the Narayana, who is the husband of Lakshmi. So Lakshmi becomes prominent. Her name comes first. Similarly, we say Gauri Shankara. Gauri Shankar means Shiva. Shiva is also known as Shankar because he was married to Gauri. Gauri is Shakti. So Shakti comes first. Gauri Shankar, Lakshmi Narayana, Sita Ram. We don't say Ram Sita. You see all the bhajans, all the hymns and the praises that we sing to Lord Rama, we call him Sita Ram. Sita Ram. Sita Ram is a male name. Ram, who is the husband of Sita. Sita's Ram. That is Sita Ram. It's a conjoined word. So also, we never say Krishna Radha, we say Radha Krishna. Radha Krishna is a very famous name. So, Radha Krishna, Lakshmi Narayan, Gauri Shankar, Sita Ram. That's how it sounds poetic, sweet, and melodious when the name of Shakti comes first. It's not just the spiritual significance, but also the phonetic, the melodious sound and sweetness of the name Gauri Shankar, Sita Ram, Radha Krishna, Lakshmi Narayan. Somehow they have, even the Sanskrit language has made it so sweet. So although the life stories of all the avatara spiritual concerts are full of pain and suffering, their devotion to their husbands shines forth unparalleled. That is how they show that the Shakti is responsible for the empowering the spiritual ideal of the Shiva. Shakti represents the ideal of womanhood. Their lives, I mean the lives of the spiritual consorts, were brightened by their love, their purity, their patience, their forbearance, their contentment, service, self-control, renunciation, all the qualities which are required of a spiritual sadhaka, male or female, it doesn't really matter. As one of the famous devotees, women devotees of Sri Krishna, Mirabai, said, in this Vrindavan, somebody said, you are a woman and I am a man, I will not meet you. In those days, they were very dogmatic regarding meeting women. So Mirabai did not like this discrimination because of gender. So she very clearly said, she said, I thought in Vrindavan, Sri Krishna alone is the Purusha, and all of us means the manifested human beings, whether is a male or female, they are all embodiment of Shakti. So the saint understood and welcomed Mirabai, said, yes, how out of ignorance I made a mistake by discriminating between the genders, but what you say is true. According to Sankhya, anything that is manifest, male or female, inanimate or animate, everything falls under the purview of Shakti or Prakriti. So we are all part of Prakriti. And it is the Lord, our attachment to the Lord. It's not just the physical marriage that is consummated when these incarnations marry. They just come to demonstrate. That is why when Sri Ramakrishna passed away, the body of Sri Ramakrishna passed away and he entered Mahasamadhi. Mother said, "Oh Kali, where have you gone?" He saw the manifestation of Kali in Sri Ramakrishna. So every body that we see or everything that moves in this world is made of Prakriti. So the ideal of womanhood, not as a biological woman, but as the ideal of Shakti and how to deal with the problem of change that is very natural to Prakriti. Prakriti means change. Change means suffering. Suffering because we hold on to this Prakriti which vanishes all the time. So that is not great fun. We wish to possess certain things, we wish to hold on to certain things for a longer period of time. But everything that we hold on to vanishes in the realm of Prakriti. So that is why we need the help of Prakriti. Of course, it is Prakriti alone through her Vidya Maya helps us to surmount Prakriti, but we need her help. So that is why this ideal of ideal womanhood is not only an ideal for women, but for everybody. Their lives, women, when we say the glory of womanhood or the glory of Shakti, what we mean is the love, purity, patience, forbearance, contentment, the idea of service, self-control, renunciation of the gross, devotion and faith to the eternal, gratitude, unselfishness, the voluntary poverty and austerity, simple living, sacrifice for humanity, reliance on God, all those things which will reduce our dependence on Prakriti and increase our attachment to the Purusha or the spirit is what these incarnations come to demonstrate, whether it's the male counterpart or the female counterpart. No doubt the female counterpart of the incarnation will inspire women because of her biological birth as a woman. But the ideal is for everybody. The ideal of how using the higher powers of Shakti, using the higher powers of Prakriti, we can overcome Prakriti. It's like removing one thorn with another thorn. The thorn is harmful, but if it is used to remove the other thorn, Sri Ramakrishna says, it will give us relief. So everything about Shakti is not bad. Because she is Prakriti, because she is changing, she can change things for the better. To hold on to Shakti, as demonstrated by these great incarnations, is the goal of their incarnation, as Sri Ma Sharda, as Sita, as Radha, as Gauri. They came all the different incarnations. You see, the spiritual concerts, especially the feminine, biologically feminine counterpart, they come to demonstrate these virtues. As I said, their love and their purity, patience, forbearance, contentment, service, self-control, renunciation, devotion, faith, gratitude, unselfishness, voluntary poverty, that is simple living, austerity, sacrifice for humanity, and above all, reliance on God for everything. Reliance, to rely on one's inherent divinity, the Purusha within, the pure consciousness which never falters, which never changes, is what is demonstrated by these great spiritual concerts. And their life becomes challenging, and because their life is challenging, it gives us, there is an inspiration for us to, because our lives, they suffer so much for our sake. They show a higher level of tolerance, a higher level of forbearance, patience, so that at our level we can easily negotiate our little troubles, our little uh, problems of life. So, though our problems seem unsurmountable, but when we see their problems and how they could surmount it, and the way they did to surmount those problems, then we get inspiration. That is the purpose of the incarnation. So, now we shall see in this chapter, before she reaches there, from 1867 to 1871, we find Sarada, though she was married, lived with her parents in Jairambati and continued to serve her own relatives. That's the easier part of her life. She is in familiar terrain, you may say. She is not in the midst of unknown people. For unknown in the sense, apart from the husband, she had to interact with so many new people. But she was with her relatives from 1867 to 71 after she was very happy. 4 long years had passed, and though her body was in Jairambati, the author says, her mind dwelled on her sweet memories of the master. And now she grew up into a beautiful young woman of 18 years old. She was almost 18 when she first decided to visit. Sometimes, or very often, every day practically, she would expect to hear from her husband. But no message came. Sometimes she would say to herself, he was so kind to me during our last meeting, the previous meeting a few years ago when he came, he was so nice. How can he forget me? He taught me everything, spiritual knowledge, how to run the household, how to manage the expenses, everything he taught, even the secular knowledge, even how to light a lamp and how to save oil. Many practical tips he gave so that she can become a ideal housewife. So, and also a disciple. So, all the things that are necessary to become an ideal disciple, he gave that knowledge to her. And he says, he was so kind to me, he looked after me so well, that why did he not call me? I mean, why did he not send for me? So she consoled herself by saying, he was very kind to me during our last meeting. How can he ever forget me? In good time, he will, of his own accord, surely call me. Let me patiently wait for the happy moment when he will call. So now you see, then all these incidents happened, which we discussed, that there was so much of gossip going on, and everybody was trying to add to the confusion by giving all sorts of wrong ideas about Sri Ramakrishna. He said perhaps he has gone mad, perhaps there are so many things happening there in Dakshineshwar, because nobody, in those days, it was not possible to communicate so easily. One had to physically go. So we saw how the people around were also instigating or maybe trying to spread these rumors, and Shama Sundari, Sharda's mother, was feeling so bad that whom did I marry my daughter to? I've literally married her to a person. If what these people say, if what these rumors that I hear, if they are true, then I have literally married her to a mad person. She was very innocent and she believed what she heard. But it is this Dhani, Aunt Bhanu, who was a very strong figure. Aunt Bhanu was a very strong woman because she was independent. You see, that shows, though she was a widow, you see Gopalar Ma, Yogin Ma, and all these women were companions of Sri Ma Sharda Devi, because they led their life independently. They were very strong women, and they would not be carried away by this silly gossip of these housewives. So these women were very strong women, and they, because of their independence and because of their dedication and devotion to God, whom they considered to be the only support, they led independent lives. Their opinions were independent. Their attitude towards life were independent. They just did not follow the crowd. But if you congregate, if you fall in a congregation, if you are under the social structure, you never tasted independence yourself in your life, then it is possible that you get carried away by the gossip of the world. The if you keep yourself aloof, that is what Latu Maharaj used to say. It's better to go and sleep away your time than sit in the circles and gossip. But these village women who had nothing better to do, even while they were collecting water, on the way they will go in groups and then they will go on gossiping eternally. That was the reason why the mother of Srima Sharda Devi, though Sharda Devi decided not to mix with them because she knew it is not true. Whereas after a certain time, Shama Sundari herself got influenced. And the villagers' ridicule was going on unabated. So they went on and on and on and telling the same thing again and again. But it was Aunt Bhanu, who was a very independent woman and who helped Shama Sundari and explained to her that don't make yourself miserable listening to this useless gossip. You're, and she also told Sharada, you know your husband is Shiva himself. He is just a divine being. I recognized that divinity in him when I saw him last. You will see that one day he will not only take you there, but he will make you feel that he is the person, he is a person who will be conquering the hearts of all the people, all the devotees, and saving them from all the troubles that they face in the world. He is going to be a great person. You know it very well. And your role now is to go to him and help him in his mission, which she did. So, some village, as I said, that to travel, undergo a very long journey, nearly 64 miles, and I had to cross 5 rivers: Amodar, Dwarkeshwar, Mundeshwari, Damodar, and Ganges. All these rivers, if you cross, then of course the journey was very scenic. Lot of panoramic scenery of vast paddy fields, beautiful lotus ponds everywhere. These footpaths which they had to traverse. They obviously would not be going on the highways, which would take a longer time. They would be crossing through the villages, taking shortcuts, passing through these footpaths, because a lot of people used to walk, trek to the nearest station, and then if they had money, they would go to uh, Dakshineshwar or Calcutta by train from the nearest station. But even that was a long journey. But those who did not have money, they would not mind traveling 64 miles from Kamarpuk or from Jairambati to Dakshineshwar. And they had to cross many rivers where they had to pay the boatmen to help them cross. They had to wait till the boat came, and the boatmen earned a living by mm, carrying passengers across the river. That's the only way. There were no bridges there. So these boatmen, you'll find a lot of boatmen even now. Lot of boats. But nowadays there are so many bridges, so people prefer to cross. Even if they go by foot, they cross these bridges, which are many. But in those days there were hardly any bridges. You had to go by boat alone. So 5 rivers. So if you take a short route, then you have to pass. You have to pass, or you have to cross these 5 rivers: Dwarkeshwar, Amodar, which is in Jairambati, Mundeshwari, Damodar, and Ganges. Ganga itself had to be crossed. Maybe in those days boats were available because roads were not so good, or the railway bridge was only one. So it was very difficult to go to Dakshineshwar. But as I said, she was tired, and her father decided that because she had some fever and she fell ill, she had to take rest. And there she had a wonderful vision of Ma Kali, which told her, which reassured her that her journey is not only going to be complete, because the father thought, in this condition, how can I take her? She may even die. She was lying unconscious with fever. And she saw a girl, black girl, dark girl, black in complexion, but a beautiful girl coming and passing her hand over her head, and the fever subsided. And then she asked, very innocently, she asked, "Who are you? I've never seen you before." He said, "Are you some of our relatives?" Because they used to pass through many villages. Somehow or the other, some distant relative would be there. She actually did not think that it was the goddess herself. She asked, "Who are you?" She said, "Yes, I'm your sister." And then many years later, Ma Sharda Devi recounted this story, and she said, she saw that this dark woman had her feet covered with dust. So she said, "Why don't you just go and wash your feet with water? Perhaps people did not give you water to wash your feet." She was not aware that this is a divine being. But this young girl came, "No, mother, I shall be leaving right now. I have come to see you. Please don't fear, you will get well." And from next day, actually, she got well. So then they started walking. Father found, Ramchandra found that she had recovered. So but she engaged a palki for her, because Ramchandra knew that it is Ramchandra Mukhopadhyay, her father. She knew that after the fever she would not be able to walk. So engaged a palki for her, and people would lift her and take her some. Uh, of course, they had to be paid, but they arrived at Baidyabati, which is after crossing five bridges, five rivers. They came to Baidyavati, and then they had to cross the Ganga, and they took a boat to Dakshineshwar and reached the whole group reached the temple garden at 9 o'clock that evening. It was very dark. So she, as soon as I told you, we discussed this last time, Sri Ramakrishna was very kind, and he received her so nicely that she was wondering, why do people call him a madman? So, because he had come to know that she was sick, as soon as he said, "Oh, you are so I'm so happy that you have come." And he says, "Unfortunately, my Mathur Babu, who is to help him, if Mathur Babu were to be alive, he would have treated you, kept you in a very comfortable place. But anyway, I feel as if I have lost my right arm." He depended a lot on Mathur Babu, because Mathur Babu was one who was divinely ordained to supply whatever Sri Ramakrishna needed. Of course, there were other people, but they were not as generation and as caring as Mathur Babu. So Sri Ramakrishna, so much love he had for Sri Ma Sharda. See, I have lost him as if I lost my right arm. If he were there, then I would have been absolutely unconcerned, and I would have left all my responsibilities, and he would have taken such nice care. But anyway, he wanted her to go to the Nahamat, where her mother-in-law was staying. That is what Hriday had arranged. He said, "No, no, no, no. In this condition, she cannot go there. Who will look after her?" So Sri Ramakrishna kindly saw to it that she stayed there for a few days, and the physician also was asked to come and examine Sri Ma Sharda Devi, and afterwards 2 or 3 baskets of puffed rice was given to Sharda and her companions who had come. That was the normal dinner that they could provide. And then a separate bed was made for Sharda on the floor in the master's room, and one companion was always there to look after her till she got okay. So one can imagine that Ma Sharda was so relieved, because that little lingering doubt was there. What if what these people said was true? Had he gone insane? In that case, it is my duty to serve him. But here, she was presently surprised when she was lying and when Sri Ramakrishna made such a nice arrangement for her to look after her when she was sick, that he is definitely not insane. He seemed to be absolutely normal, rational, loving, and caring. So his cordial welcome eased her anxiety to a great extent and uncertainty. Whatever little uncertainty was there because of the gossip of these village women, that was all removed. So she knew that her godlike divine husband had not only not forgotten her, he was more gracious than before. For the past 4 years, ignorant and worldly people had spread a lot of vicious rumors. That is what the power of the spoken word is. One has to judiciously use the power of the spoken word. It's not just the mantra. When we refer to the power of the spoken word, it is how one judiciously uses one's speech. We have many sense organs. We have hearing, we have eyes, we can speak, we breathe. There are so many functions that we do. Every one of them should be directed towards God. So if we speak, let it be about God and His glories. And let it be sweet and beneficial to all. Why should it be vicious? Why should it be full of negativity? So ignorant people, not knowing how they mishandle the spoken word and cause so much of torment and unnecessary anxiety which they created in the mind of, tried to create in the mind of Sri Ma Sharda and also her mother and all her father and everybody in the household were so much worried that he's not, perhaps if that is true, Sri Ramakrishna's health is not good and is mentally deranged, then what shall we do? They were worried, but you see, when they actually reached there, they found that it was all idle gossip and vicious rumors that the villagers loved to spread. So, though she had been tormented for the last 4 years with village gossip, she realized that some good had come out of it. She took it positively. She said, had it not been for the gossip, she would have relaxed and waited for Sri Ramakrishna to call her. But now she has taken her own decision. She was extremely anxious. So sometimes negative setbacks, they sometimes help us to do good things. When we are in difficulty, we really try to improve and find a permanent solution for our problems, and we take to spirituality. So many times these pains, this village gossip and all the things, if we really see that some good comes out of it ultimately. From the subjective point of view, though we should not indulge in that, but if we are exposed, blessed are the people who are reviled. That's what Bible says. It is in this sense he has mentioned that. He says, blessed are the people who are persecuted or who are reviled, for they shall be called the children of God. So very often you find that when society criticizes such holy people, they in fact manifest their divinity, as Swami, as in the beginning we saw that when a snake is struck, somebody stamps upon the snake, it raises its hood. All its energy is gathered and it raises its hood. When the embers are, the fire wood is about to be, is not burning brightly, we just shake it, give it a nice shaking. So also we need some kind of instigation from Prakriti. Prakriti herself arranges that these difficult circumstances come to us and we strengthen our determination, strengthen our willpower, and say, how can we not surmount these difficulties? Then we look to spiritual help, and when we get spiritual help, we get confidence in relying upon the spiritual people, spiritual Ishta, and all the people associated which take us to divinity. We rely on them, and then we find that we can negotiate. Though the problems will not end, we will be able to negotiate them better. So ultimately, it led to a happy reunion with her husband, and she found out that he was perfectly not only normal but was more loving and caring than before. So, moreover, Sharda also must have been very apprehensive about how the master would receive her, because she had heard that he had taken monastic vows also. This is a unique type of marriage, though Sri Ramakrishna took formal monastic vows in 1863. See, he is after all an incarnation. He came to demonstrate several ideals: the ideal monk, the ideal husband, the ideal wife, the ideal father, the ideal mother. In a sense, he was so many to so many people. Different people had different relationship with him. Gopal Verma considered him to be her son. She was quite aged. She was worshipping Krishna. She saw her Krishna in Ramakrishna. So everybody saw some aspect of the deity being manifested in him. So Ma Sharda knew that in 1863, Totapuri had come, and normally a monk renounces his family, especially his wife. So she was expecting that once she has become a monk, I would have to live alone. In fact, she lived like a nun. Even though she was there, they never had any physical relationship. Not only that, they hardly met each other. So for all practical purposes, even Ma Sharda Devi lived like a nun, though she was living a few meters away in the Nahabat. It's very rare that she could even meet him. He was so busy. He was practically, his monastic life continued even after 1863. And for a devout wife, it, the situation can be very bad if they are not spiritual. That after having married somebody takes to sannyas, it can become very painful for worldly women. But absolutely there was no apprehension in mother's life. And when he saw that he was treating her not only as a wife but as a child, as a mother. In fact, he said uh, his relationship with Ma Sharda, he said, how, when she said, "How do you look upon me?" She was curious to know what is the attitude of her husband towards her. He said, "It is the same attitude I have towards my biological mother, towards the mother in the temple, and one who is doing my seva. All of them are the manifestations of that same divine mother." That's what he immediately said. So she found that this kind of deep spiritual respect which he gave to the Divine Mother was found reflected in his behavior towards her. So not only he gave her good medical treatment, arranged for special diet, and within 3-4 days she recovered. And Sri Ramakrishna herself supervised her medical care and diet, and then arranged for her to stay with his mother in Nahabat during the uh, that period. And now Mother Sarada Devi was very much reassured. She now decided, now that my health has improved, now I should serve not only Sri Ramakrishna as a dutiful wife would, but also his mother, who was living there, who was very old. So Ramchandra Mukhopadhyay, who stayed for a few days till she recovered, was very happy to see that everything was fine here. They were thinking of, they were anxious, thinking that how will she live here alone. They just wanted to see how situation is here before leaving her. But after seeing how nicely she was treated, for 3 or 4 days, Sri Ramakrishna took personal care, and then seeing that she has recovered, they were also very happy, and without any tension, without any anxiety, and worry, they went back to give the good news to Sharda's mother, who was in Jairambati. She would have been very anxious, trying to find out how her uh, daughter was doing, how her son-in-law was behaving with her. So later, Srima Sharda Devi herself once remarked, she said, uh, she told the devotees much later about these days, of course, after the passing away of Sri Ramakrishna. The master thought so much about my welfare. He always looked after my comfort and saw to my needs. What an intense love he had for me. People had circulated a rumor that he was mad, and my parents were anxious about me. Afterwards, they were relieved and happy observing the master's normal behavior and his loving relationship with me. Ordinary people may wonder why Sri Ramakrishna did not bring his wife to Dakshineshwar earlier. Shardanji now explains the situation. Of course, that is in a different book, Sri Ramakrishna, the Great Master, which we discuss on Sunday, alternate Sundays. There he explains why she was allowed to stay there for 4 years and suffer all this gossip and rumor. He could have brought her much earlier. What was the reason? So Sardanji says, undoubtedly an ordinary person would have done that. He would have brought his wife. But the master was not such an ordinary person. He did not behave in that manner. This is what Swami Shardanji writes. Those who are accustomed, see, this is very important. Those who are accustomed to performing every action while depending solely on God at every moment of their lives do not make any plans. They just allow God to make plans for them. They don't assert their ego and take decisions in their life that they should do this, they should do that. If they do that, then many times if we assert our ego and we really do not know what is good for us, what is not. So Sri Ramakrishna, to show to the world, just let God, depend solely on God, pray to him, and he will show the right path. Perhaps he'll guide somebody to guide you properly. So they don't make any plans. They allow, as I told you, there is this idea of management by delay. It's not just delay, but it's that is just a simple management technique. In Japan, they say if you delay taking decisions, the problems will be solved by itself. But that is a negative way of dealing with the problems. But here it's positive. I am not taking a decision because I know God takes a better decision. He will give me the intuition, or he will give intuition to somebody who will guide me properly, so that I know that whatever is good for me has to be done. So they are accustomed, Swami Shardanji, right? These people, spiritual people, very often, they are accustomed to performing every action while depending solely on God. Praying, 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 and allowing some thought to come to their mind. And do not, for the good of themselves and for the others, they depend on the assistance that they get intuitively by God's cosmic intelligence, and wait for some strong signal from some holy source rather than resorting to their own limited, puny intellects. That's why though Swami Brahmananji, I heard, would never take a decision. He will ask his brahmacharis when it was time for him to leave Bhuvaneshwar or Puri, whenever he went there. They would ask him, when should we book our return tickets? So he would ask somebody to bring the almanac or the panjika and say, just see the good dates. There in India, we believe that there are certain days and times in a week where one can start one journey. Of course, nowadays nobody follows that, but in those days they used to follow. And they said that the journeys have to be undertaken on auspicious days so that the journey becomes smooth, because there was so much uncertainty. So Swami Brahmanand used to tell the brahmacharis to consult the horoscope, consult the almanac and find out the good date. But they knew that he will never go according to that. In spite of having 4 or 5 dates fixed for him, he will never ask. Suddenly one day he will say, now you book the ticket. Because as admitted by him, he would wait for Sri Ramakrishna's vision or something, some signal or some intuitive thought from the Lord, from the God's cosmic intelligence, which would tell him what to do or what not to do, when to do. They did not always depend on their small intellects. They thought God is more intelligent than we are. He knows what is good for us. So we leave everything to the Divine Mother, as they say, Maya Richa used to call it. my richa. Anything happens, is its mother's will. Or as that in the parable, it is Rama's will. So the divine will should and must guide our destiny. If we tune ourselves to divine will, then we will be told at the right time by the right people or our own mind, which acts as our own guru, to uh, tell us what I should really be doing. You're more confident, you're more sure that this is the right thing to do at the right time. So that is why Sri Krishna used to wait, and he perhaps after 4 years he knew that mother would come, and he allowed things to happen rather than push and like any other worldly people. As soon as they just want to, they will contact the wife and ask her to come. Here they were totally independent. Sri Sarada Devi, though she was married, it is a unique marriage. Right from beginning, she was independent. Thakur respected her for that because she was totally independent, not hanging on Sri Krishna for any kind of support. But at the same time, she was so kind, so helpful, so devoted to her husband. But that doesn't mean she was hanging on her husband for anything. She was just independent. She was, if 4 years she was not called, she was fine. If she is called, she is fine. If she is asked to serve, she served. Many times some other women used to come and she used to meet her husband only once or twice a day when she took food for him. Even that was denied and she did not mind. She was alone, living, doing whatever she had to do, doing her spiritual practices, rarely meeting people. She was happy with her own life. So that is how Providence decides that things should happen at a appointed hour or appointed day. Things will happen when they are to happen. If we depend, if we rely on Providence, if we have that intuitive, uh, that patience to develop that kind of intuition which will make us take the right decision at the right time. That's what we call the power of choice. It's such a difficult thing to choose to do what we should do or what we should not do. To take a decision is not as easy as it seems in life. So, the power of choice, the power of discriminative choice, to discriminate properly what is good, what is real, what is unreal, what is eternal, what will be more useful, what is a temporary kind of attachment which will make us miserable. All these things, all these pros and cons, we have to think and take the right decision at the right time. That is what we have to do in our life. Very many times it comes, we hang upon certain people, we hang upon certain personalities. I mean, in the world, I'm not talking of the divine. We have to hang upon the Lord, we have to hang upon our spiritual uh, uh, inspiration, whoever, wherever we get. That is different. That spiritual inspiration helps you to get rid of our dependence on other people. Because the moment we find that we depend on something gross in this world to make us happy, though it may make us happy for some time, it ultimately leads to sorrow. So one has to learn the art. That is why Sri Krishna took his own time. He was not in a hurry to just bring her. That is what Swami Shardanand says, that it let the divine will prevail. Things will happen at the right time. So Sri Krishna had finished his sadhana and he was waiting to share his spiritual treasures which he had with his disciples. The disciples had not yet come, but his chief disciple or his chief partner in spiritual progress was Ma Sharda. So he also waited for the right time so that the disciple will come, the disciples will come, and when that time for the divine drama, when Providence, when Ma Kali or the Lord himself will decide that the stage has to be set so that the divine drama should begin or should continue, then he himself, the Lord himself or Mother Kali herself will bring Srima Sharda Devi, and she will do her part, which she did for more than 34 years, because that was the need of the day, to show that women themselves can become centers of spiritual power. We don't always need a male domination. So, to train her to become an inspiration for the whole world, not only to women but also to men, to demonstrate that great, wonderful ideal of motherhood. Sri Ramakrishna brought uh, Srima Sharda Devi. I mean, she came there at the right time under the inspiration of his own divine mother, whose instructions he followed for every decision that he took in his life. When he had to go to Totapuri for his sannyas, he waited and asked his divine mother, waited for an answer, and then took sannyas. So he did everything by consulting the divine mother, who was the source of his inspiration. That same divine mother he he worshipped in Sri Ma Sharda Devi. We'll come to that topic in our next class. If there are some questions, as somebody told me that you should give some time for people to type out their questions. If there are some questions, I can answer. Otherwise, we'll conclude for today. We had a nice uh, retreat in Scotland, in Edinburgh, followed by an equally nice program in Newcastle on the next day, though it was in the afternoon. It was at 12:45, but a lot of people came in the afternoon. So it was a nice gathering. And as I had announced earlier, the last weekend, of course, I could take one class on Sunday there, Sunday evening, after the afternoon class in the Hindu temple in Newcastle on Sri Krishna and Bhagavad Gita. I could take another class in the evening on Sunday. And since I came on Monday, we don't have a class on Monday. I could take today's class also. So unless I go, only Saturday's class I had to cancel, because last Saturday there was a whole day retreat. But in future, my classes will be on Friday, on which we don't have any class in Newcastle, followed by the following Saturday, where there will be a talk. And if possible, I'll try to take the class from Edinburgh or Glasgow, wherever they arrange the meeting. So I'll take your leave. I don't think there's anybody. Yes, there is a question. Could it not mislead some women if they are taught to see the divine in their prospective husband? If there is a forced marriage or scenario where young girls don't. Yeah, of course. They don't understand the spiritual freedom. People do not marry with this attitude, obviously. It is not possible in a worldly setting, because people, definitely young girls, whether it is arranged marriage or some kind of forced marriage or whatever it is, if they have been forced into bondage, and if they don't have any idea of spiritual freedom, that marriage will not be so happy. If there is uh, some kind of difference in the ideology of the mental makeup of husband and wife, that is why many marriages fail. But at the same time, we have to remember that the spiritual ideal is not very common. Though a lot of books are there, people very often do not try to relate what they read, the inspiration that they get. That is why these discussions are held. These books have been written so that the divine life could be studied, and their message, of course, Sri Krishna and his message, Sri Ramakrishna and his message, they're all meant for people who can have them as role models. Though it may be difficult to follow exactly what they did, At least partially we can understand to appreciate and try to know. If you know what is the right thing, though it is difficult because people very often are not uh, aware of the spiritual ideal at all. That's not part of what they are taught either in school or at home. So it is very difficult. They take things for granted that the world is like that. You have to adjust. There will be quarrels, there will be divorces, there will be remarriages, there will be all these worldly situations are far more common than the lives of the holy people. So it is, yes, what you said is, it is very difficult. It's extremely difficult for people even to appreciate this idea. But that doesn't mean these ideas should not be given to this, to the world. Those who want, that is why Sri Ramakrishna used to very often say, whatever I say, but I don't expect people can take whatever they want from my message. Uh, in Bengali, there is a proverb that the tail and the head of the fish, normally people discard. They take only the middle portion, which is edible. So he used to say, my message, I am giving you the whole fish. You decide if you remove the head and the tail and eat only a small portion, that is your loss. I have given you the whole message, but you take whatever you can follow. That is the idea. How can young women make wiser decisions? By reading the life, there is no one method. You see, all these lives, by repeatedly listening to uh, the great women of the world, how they led their lives. They may be in minority. We can say they are the creative minority. Good people are always in minority in the world. There are some good people, extremely good people, or extremely spiritual people. Normally, a little bit spiritual people. There's so many grades. So very often, those who are extremely and highly spiritual will always be rare, because spirituality itself is a very rare thing. So it is to make wise decisions, you have to give the right choices, you have to teach, you have to spread the ideas of how to make right choices in life, which is a great challenge, because first one, we have to understand from these wonderful lives how we can take decisions in our own life. We should not be in a hurry to tell other people, because very often we don't ourselves know what is what is it to make a right choice. To make the right choice, whether it is for men or for women, they have to use their own intuition to the extent they, or take the help of the Lord Himself or the people who are serving the Lord and who have taken these good decisions themselves. So it is a question of whether one really wants it. If people want it, if they want to improve the quality of their life, they will find somebody who will inspire them, who will guide them. But if they don't want, as you said, how if people are not taught at all, if they are forced into marriage even before they can think, then it is their loss. I mean, it is not loss, it is a kind of misery to be forced by other people to take a decision which is not one's own, and which is not taken in full freedom, the full knowledge of its consequences. If somebody is forced to take a decision without explaining, that is why one has to be honest. The parents have to be honest, the world has to be very honest, and give all sorts of ideas, all sorts of situations. They should not decide what their children should do. Otherwise, they will make their life miserable. So we should give, that is why they say all types of education, secular and spiritual, you give. That should form 50 part of what we teach our younger generation. Let them choose. If they still believe that the spiritual ideal is not for them, then they may reject and follow the worldly path and bear its consequences. There's nothing wrong in that, because everybody is not equipped to make the right choice. But We have to place these things and tell them this is a choice some people have made, and this is why they are great. They have done this, they have done that. These are the consequences of making the wrong choice. So just as we put the pros and cons, when we invest money, how much thinking we do. The investors tell you these are the good side, this is the danger side. Whether you want to invest or not, the decision is left to you. We are so prudent, we are trying to think so much. When we make a small decision as investing some money, we go to the expert. So also with our life, there are the spiritual aspects, there are the secular aspects, and we have to make sure that we consult the right consultant or the person to enable us to make the right decision in life. If we can't make it, we consult an expert to invest our money. So when we invest our whole life, it is much more important to have some kind of discrimination or some kind of consultation or some kind of guidance, spiritual guidance, which is required to make a right decision in life. So I'll take your leave. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Harihi Om Tat Sat. Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.